She posted the video at 11:47 p.m. By midnight, she was gone. Not gone like she logged off. Not gone like she went to bed. Gone like the kind of gone that makes police officers go quiet when they answer the phone. The kind of gone that turns an ordinary Tuesday night into the worst night of an entire family's life. Her name was Maya Reeves, 17 years old, honor roll student. She loved iced coffee, true crime podcasts, and making TikTok from her bedroom in the small town of Callaway Creek, Georgia. Population 4,200. A town so quiet that the biggest news of the previous year had been a raccoon getting into the high school cafeteria. Nobody disappears from Callaway Creek. Until Maya did. And the chilling part, the part that will stay with you long after this video ends, is that the answer to where she went was hiding in plain sight. Right there in that last TikTok. Watched by millions of people. Liked, shared, commented on, and nobody saw it. Nobody except one person. Welcome to Story Labs. I'm going to take you through every single detail of this case. Because Maya Reeves deserves for people to know her story, the real story. Not the headlines, not the speculation. The truth. And the truth is stranger and darker than anything you've imagined. Let's go back to the beginning. Maya grew up in the kind of family that looked perfect from the outside. Her father, Daniel Reeves, was an assistant principal at Callaway Creek High, which happened to be the same school Maya attended. Her mother, Carol, ran a small online boutique selling handmade jewelry. They lived in a blue colonial house on Sycamore Lane with a golden retriever named Biscuit and a vegetable garden in the backyard. From the outside, picturesque, a Christmas card family. But here's what you need to understand about small towns. Everybody knows everybody. And when everybody knows everybody, secrets don't disappear. They just go underground. They get passed around in hushed voices at the grocery store, at church parking lots, at Little League games. And in Callaway Creek, there were whispers about the Reeves family that had been circulating for years. We'll come back to that. Maya had started her TikTok account, Amanthamur, about 18 months before she disappeared. She wasn't chasing fame. That wasn't her thing. She made videos the way some people write in journals. Little observations about her day. Funny lip syncs. Occasionally something more personal, a quiet, late-night monologue to the camera about feeling lonely or feeling misunderstood or wondering if the life you're living is actually the life that belongs to you. Those were the videos people connected with most. She had about 14,000 followers at the time. Not viral, not famous, but her community was loyal. They showed up for her. They left long comments. They DM'd her when she seemed sad. It was the kind of online presence that felt genuine because it was, her last post was supposed to be just another one of those quiet, late-night videos. It was a Tuesday in October. October 14th, to be exact. Maya had come home from school at 3:30 p.m., same as always. Her father was still at work. Her mother was in the garage, packaging orders for the boutique. Maya grabbed a snack from the kitchen. Carol remembered hearing the refrigerator open and close, went upstairs to her bedroom, and that was essentially the last time anyone in her family saw her behave normally. At dinner that evening, her mother described Maya as quiet, but quiet wasn't unusual for Maya lately. She'd been withdrawn for a few weeks, less talkative at the table, spending more time in her room. Her parents had chalked it up to typical teenage stress, junior year, college applications looming, the usual pressure. After dinner, Maya helped clear the dishes. She asked if she could be excused to do homework. Her mother said yes. Her father, who had arrived home at 6:15, barely looked up from his phone. She went upstairs. That was 7:43 p.m. Nobody saw her after that. But her phone was very busy. Between 7:43 and 11:30 p.m., Maya's phone records show a flurry of activity. Dozens of texts. Several calls, some answered, some not. She was searching things on Google that investigators would later find deeply alarming. And she was filming. At 11:47 p.m., she uploaded the TikTok. 22 seconds long. No music. No filter. Just Maya, sitting on her bed in the soft lamp light of her bedroom, looking directly into the camera. Her hair was down. She was wearing a gray hoodie. She looked calm. Almost unnaturally calm. Except for her eyes. Her eyes looked like someone who had made a decision. A final kind of decision. She said, word for word, "Hey, so, I know this is random, but I just wanted to say, for anyone who's ever felt like they were invisible, you're not. Someone sees you. And sometimes you have to stop waiting for permission to be okay." Then she smiled. Small. quiet, and the video ended. The comments came almost immediately. Her followers responded the way they always did, warmly, enthusiastically. "We see you, Maya. This is what I needed tonight. You are so valid, Queen." By 2 a.m., the video had 800 views. By 6 a.m., it had crossed 40,000. Something in her words had caught the algorithm. The video was spreading, but Maya wasn't there to see it. Because somewhere between 11:47 p.m., when she hit post, and 6:52 a.m., when her mother knocked on her bedroom door and found it empty, Maya Reeves had vanished. Carol Reeves would later describe those first moments of realization with a precision that only comes from replaying something in your mind 10,000 times. She said the first thing she noticed was the silence. Maya's alarm was set for 6:30 every morning, and you could always hear it faintly through the wall. That morning, nothing. Carol assumed Maya had turned it off early, was maybe already in the shower. She knocked anyway. No answer. She opened the door. The bed was made. Not slept in made. Neatly, deliberately. Pillows arranged. Comforter smoothed out. Maya's backpack was in the corner. Her homework, half finished, was spread across the desk. Her keys were on the nightstand. Her winter coat was hanging on the back of the door. But Maya was gone. Carol called her daughter's phone. It rang 3 times and went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She walked down the hallway. Checked the bathroom. Checked the spare room. Walked downstairs. Checked every room on the ground floor. Went into the garage. Went into the backyard. Nothing. She woke her husband. Daniel came down in his pajamas, sleep still in his eyes, and within about 90 seconds, Carol would later say she watched the color drain out of his face in real time. He called Maya's phone himself. Voicemail. They called the police at 7:04 a.m. Now, here's where the story gets complicated. Because the Callaway Creek Police Department, all 11 officers of it, had never worked a missing persons case before. Not a real one. Not a case involving a minor, a missing phone, and zero obvious explanation for how someone simply walked out of a locked house in the middle of the night without anyone hearing a single thing. Sergeant Roy Atkins was the first officer on the scene. He was 54 years old, 26 years on the force, and his most intense investigations to date had involved cattle theft and a meth operation that turned out to be a guy making candles with a suspicious number of mason jars. He walked through the house. He took notes. He asked Carol and Daniel the standard questions. When did you last see her? Does she have a boyfriend? Has she ever run away before? Is there any reason she might have left voluntarily? Daniel answered everything calmly. Methodically. He was, Carol noted, very composed for a father whose teenage daughter had just disappeared. She would think about that later. A lot. Within 12 hours, word had spread through Callaway Creek the way news only spreads in small towns. Completely and instantly. By noon, half the high school was talking about it. By 3 p.m., Maya's name was trending locally on Twitter. By 7 p.m., the story had been picked up by a news station in Atlanta. And that's when something extraordinary happened. Someone, a TikTok user with the handle @truthdig_official, watched Maya's last video for the 4th time. And then they watched it again. And again. And they saw something. Small. Something that had been right there in the background the entire time. Something that 80,000 people had watched and scrolled past without a second thought. In the bottom right corner of Maya's bedroom mirror, the mirror that was just barely visible at the edge of the frame, there was a reflection. And in that reflection, there was a face. Not Maya's face. Someone else's. Stay with us. Because what investigators found next would crack this case wide open. And what they found about the Reeves family would shock an entire town to its core. The screenshots spread across the internet within hours. @truthdig_official posted it at 9:22 p.m. with a single caption. Am I seeing things, or is there someone else in this room? By midnight, the post had been shared 12,000 times. Armchair detectives, true crime communities, and ordinary people who'd simply stumbled across Maya's original TikTok were all staring at the same grainy, partially obscured reflection in the corner of that bedroom mirror. The image was blurry. The angle was awkward. But it was undeniably a figure, standing near the doorway, partially hidden, watching. The internet did what the internet does. It exploded. Some people said it was nothing, a trick of light, pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces in random patterns, the same reason we see shapes in clouds. Others were convinced it was a second person, And if there was a second person in Maya's room while she filmed that video, then Maya hadn't been alone. And if Maya hadn't been alone, everything the police assumed about a voluntary disappearance fell apart. Sergeant Atkins would later admit, with visible discomfort, that his department had not closely reviewed the TikTok before the internet forced their hand. They had known about it. They had noted it as Maya's last known online activity. But watching it frame by frame, scrutinizing the background for hidden details, that had not happened. Not in the first 12 hours. It took a true crime TikToker in her apartment in Portland, Oregon, to find what trained investigators had missed. At the request of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who were now being brought in to assist, the original TikTok video was preserved and pulled for digital forensic analysis. The GBI had more sophisticated tools than a screenshot and a zoom function. What they found both clarified things and made them more complicated. Yes, there was a figure in the mirror, but it wasn't a person standing in the room. The reflection, when properly analyzed and enhanced, showed someone standing outside Maya's bedroom window. The window was on the second floor, which meant someone had either climbed up or was already up there. And Maya's window, investigators confirmed, had been unlatched from the inside. Let that sink in for a moment. Maya had unlatched her own window from the inside, sometime before she posted that TikTok, which meant either she had opened it herself, planning to leave that way, or she had opened it for someone else, to let them in, or to let herself out. The ground below Maya's window was soft from recent rain. There were footprints, more than one set, and the forensic team found something else in the mud below that window. Something small, something easy to miss. A broken bracelet, silver chain, single charm in the shape of a crescent moon. Carol Reeves identified it immediately. It wasn't Maya's. The bracelet became the first real thread investigators had to pull. And when they pulled it, the whole sweater started to unravel. The charm bracelet was traced through a receipt pulled from a local boutique in a town 40 minutes away to a purchase made 6 weeks earlier. The name on the receipt was Marcus Webb, 23 years old. And here is where the story takes a turn that nobody in Callaway Creek was prepared for. Marcus Webb wasn't a stranger. He wasn't some random predator who had found Maya online. He was, in fact, well known to at least one member of the Reeves family. He was a former student of Daniel Reeves. For years earlier, Daniel had been a history teacher before his promotion to assistant principal, and Marcus Webb had been in his class. They had stayed in contact after graduation. Daniel had written Marcus a college recommendation letter. Marcus had come to a few family barbecues. He was described by neighbors as a nice young man, always polite, one of Danny's success stories. But now investigators needed to know, what was his bracelet doing in the mud below Maya's window? And why, when they went to Marcus Webb's apartment to ask him exactly that question, did they find it empty? Marcus Webb was gone too. 2 people vanished from the same small town on the same night. The GBI's working theory shifted rapidly. This was no longer a runaway case, and it was no longer a simple abduction. Something else was happening here, something more layered, more planned, more deliberately obscured. Meanwhile, the public investigation on social media was running parallel to, and sometimes faster than, the official one. Users had gone back through Maya's entire TikTok archive. Every video, every comment, every interaction. And they began noticing things. Comments on Maya's post from an account with no profile picture, no following at m.w.watching that had been quietly present on her page for months. Always in the comments. Always just 1 or 2 words. Real. This. True. Innocuous enough individually. But scrolled through in sequence across months of videos, it was a presence. A constant, silent, watching presence. The account was traced. It belonged to Marcus Webb. He had been following Maya's online life for at least 7 months. Not loudly, not obviously, just there, in the background, watching, just like in a mirror. But here's where something crucial shifts. Because as the GBI dug deeper into Marcus Webb's background, his phone records, his financial history, his movements in the weeks leading up to October 14th, the profile they assembled was not the profile of a predator. Marcus Webb had no criminal record, no history of violence. He had held the same job, a warehouse position in a town 40 minutes north, for 2 years. His co-workers described him as quiet, reliable, kept to himself. His landlord said he always paid rent on time. His phone records showed regular contact with his mother in Savannah, a college friend in Charlotte, and Daniel Reeves. Frequent contact, texts and calls going back years, which, on the surface, made sense. Former student, mentor relationship, nothing unusual. Except the GBI pulled the content of those messages. And what they found in those messages changed the entire shape of the case. I need you to understand something before I tell you this next part. Small towns have long memories, and the whispers that had circulated about the Reeves family for years, the ones people traded quietly in parking lots and over backyard fences, those whispers had always been about Daniel. Specifically about Daniel's temper, about certain incidents at the school that had been quietly smoothed over, about the way, at certain community events, Carol would smile too hard and speak too carefully, like someone performing happiness rather than feeling it. Nobody had ever said anything official. Nobody had filed anything. Nobody wanted to be the person in a small town who accused the assistant principal of something without ironclad proof. But Marcus Webb had seen something. 4 years earlier, as a student in Daniel Reeves' class, Marcus had witnessed something he was never supposed to see. Something that happened after school, in an empty corridor, when Marcus had gone back to retrieve a forgotten jacket. He had seen Daniel grab a student by the collar, slam them against the locker, lean in close, and say something quietly that made the student go white with fear. The student was Maya, his own daughter. Marcus had been 17. He'd stood frozen in that hallway for 3 seconds, then backed away quietly, told nobody, gone home, and tried to convince himself he'd misread the situation, that it was discipline, that it wasn't what it looked like, but it looked like what it looked like, and it had been eating at Marcus Webb ever since. The text messages between Marcus and Daniel were 2 separate conversations happening at the same time. On the surface, friendly. A mentor catching up with a former student. Plans to grab coffee. Casual small talk. But threaded through those messages, if you knew what you were looking at, was something else entirely. Marcus had been slowly, carefully, indirectly trying to ask Daniel about Maya. About how she was doing. About whether things at home were okay. And Daniel's responses, smooth, polished, the responses of a man practiced at presenting a particular version of himself, had been consistently reassuring. Maya's great. Little dramatic sometimes. You know how teenagers are. She keep herself busy. Bit moody lately, but nothing to worry about. Thanks for checking in. She'd get a kick out of knowing her old man still has fans. Then, 2 weeks before Maya disappeared, Marcus sent a different kind of message. He'd seen one of Maya's late-night TikToks, one of her quiet, vulnerable ones, and something in it had set off alarm bells loud enough that he couldn't ignore them anymore. He wrote to Daniel, "Hey, I know this is probably nothing, but Maya posted something that kind of worried me. Is everything okay at home? Really okay?" Daniel's response came within 4 minutes. 4 minutes. "Everything is fine. Please don't involve yourself in my family's business. Marcus." I mean that kindly. The speed of that response. The precision of it. The warmth drained out and replaced with something clipped and final. That was the last text Marcus sent to Daniel Reeves. But it wasn't the last contact Marcus had with the Reeves family. Because 2 weeks later, Maya Reeves, who had found Marcus Webb's name in her father's phone, who had spent weeks working up the courage to reach out, who had seen those messages and understood what Marcus had been trying to do, sent Marcus a DM on Instagram. "I know you've been worried about me. You're not wrong to be." That was the first message. Sent at 8:14 p.m. on October 14th, less than 4 hours before she posted her final TikTok. The conversation that followed, recovered from Marcus's cloud backup, was 23 messages long. And by the end of it, they had made a plan. Maya wasn't abducted. Maya left. And Marcus Webb helped her. Stay with us. Because in the final act of this story, we'll tell you where Maya went, what she'd been living through, and what happened to the man who should have protected her most. Read that again slowly. Maya wasn't taken. Maya left. She had planned it carefully, methodically. In the weeks leading up to October 14th, Maya had been quietly preparing. Small things. Packing a few essential items. Clothes, her journal, her birth certificate which she'd found in her parents' filing cabinet. Into a bag she kept hidden under a loose floorboard in her closet. A floorboard. Investigators later note that she had specifically loosened herself over the course of several weeks. Slowly, carefully, without making noise. She had identified the one window in her room that couldn't be seen from her parents' bedroom. She had unlatched it weeks in advance, so it moved smoothly and silently. She had studied the patrol patterns of neighborhood. Not that Callaway Creek had much of one, but she noted which neighbors had dogs, which had porch lights on timers, which direction offered the most shadow. 17 years old, planning an escape with the precision and patience of someone who had spent years learning to survive in a house where the wrong move had consequences. That is not the behavior of a dramatic teenager. That is the behavior of someone who is afraid. The DM conversation with Marcus on the night of October 14th was the final piece falling into place. Maya had been planning to leave for weeks, but she'd had no safe destination. No place to go where her father couldn't find her, no adult she trusted enough to involve, no resources she could access without leaving a financial trail Daniel could follow. Then she found those messages, found Marcus, found the proof that someone else had seen. Someone else had been quietly, inadequately, but genuinely trying to care. She reached out to him at 8:14 p.m. They talked for an hour. By 9:30, they had a plan. Marcus would drive to Callaway Creek, 40 minutes away, park 2 streets over, and wait. Maya would post her TikTok, say what she needed to say to the only community that had ever made her feel less alone, and then she would climb out her window, cross 2 backyards, and get in his car. And they would drive. Away from Callaway Creek. Away from Daniel Reeves. The TikTok wasn't random. It was a goodbye, wrapped in enough warmth and universality that nobody would read it as a farewell. But Maya knew what it was. She was saying goodbye to the community that had kept her sane in the only language she had available to her. For anyone who's ever felt invisible, you're not. Someone sees you. And sometimes you have to stop waiting for permission to be okay. She wasn't just talking to her followers. She was talking to herself. Maya and Marcus drove through the night. No destination posted online, no trail of credit card transactions, no phone pings. Maya had left her phone at home deliberately, placed on her nightstand, powered on, because she understood that investigators would look for it, and she needed to buy as much time as possible. They drove to Savannah. To Marcus's mother, a woman named Grace Webb, 61 years old, retired schoolteacher, who, when they arrived at her door at 3 a.m., asked no questions, opened the door wide, made them both tea, and quietly called the one person she trusted to help, her attorney. By 8 a.m., the morning Carol Reeves found her daughter's empty bedroom. Grace Webb's attorney had already begun making calls. Not to the police, not yet, because Maya had arrived with more than fear and a go-bag. She had arrived with evidence. Photographs, detailed journals going back 2 years, screenshots of messages, medical records from a clinic she had visited alone, taking a bus on a Saturday morning when her father thought she was at a study group, because something had happened and she hadn't known what else to do or who else to tell. The case against Daniel Reeves did not begin with an investigation. It began with a 17-year-old girl who had documented everything, because she knew one day she might need to prove it. When GBI investigators followed the thread of the bracelet to Marcus Webb, traced his connection to Daniel, and began looking at the full picture, it took less than 48 hours for Maya's location to be found. Grace Webb's attorney contacted the GBI directly and facilitated a meeting. Maya was safe, physically unharmed and safe, and she was ready to talk. The interview lasted 4 hours. Maya sat across from a female GBI investigator, and she talked in that same calm, precise, quietly devastating way she'd apparently approached everything about what life in the Reeves house had actually been like. Not the Christmas card version, the real version. Physical abuse, psychological control, years of being told in small, quiet ways, and occasionally very loud, unquiet ways, that what was happening was normal, that she was the problem, that she was dramatic, too sensitive, imagining things. The same language Daniel had used about her to Marcus. You know how teenagers are. Investigator Rachel Hollis, who led the interview, later said, and I want to quote this carefully because it matters, Maya Reeves was, in her words, one of the most self-possessed young people she had ever encountered in a professional setting. A teenager who had survived years of abuse without a single adult in her life recognizing it, who had researched and planned and documented and executed a safe exit entirely on her own, and who sat in that room and told her story without flinching, without embellishment, without asking for anything except to be believed. Daniel Reeves was arrested on October 18th. 4 days after Maya disappeared. He was taken into custody at Callaway Creek High School, where he was, if you can believe it, still go to work every day in the days his daughter was missing, maintaining that composed, concerned, cooperative facade he had apparently maintained for years. He was charged with felony child abuse and cruelty to a child. Additional charges were added as Maya's documentation was processed and corroborated. A search of the family home uncovered further evidence that supported everything Maya had told investigators. He pled not guilty. He was convicted 14 months later, sentenced to 12 years. Carol Reeves is a more complicated figure in this story, and I think it's important to handle her fairly because the question people always ask, the question that floated through the comment sections and the true crime forums and the news coverage, is, how did she not know? The answer, as is often the answer in these situations, is she probably did know. Some version of it. But she had her own fear, her own conditioning, her own paralysis. She was not charged with any crime. She cooperated fully with investigators. She did not contest the divorce. She has not spoken publicly. Maya, when asked about her mother, said only this: "I hope she's okay. I really do. But I needed to save myself first." Marcus Webb was never charged with anything. No crime had been committed. Maya had planned her own exit. Marcus had been told she was in danger, and at no point had Marcus acted with anything other than concern for a minor he believed was being harmed. There was significant debate about this online. Some people felt Marcus should have gone to the police rather than helping Maya disappear. And that is a valid discussion to have. But I want to offer this context. Maya had told Marcus in their conversation that night that she had considered going to the police herself. She had even begun researching it. And then she had found something that stopped her. The Callaway Creek Police Department's chief of staff, a position that coordinated with all local schools on safety protocols, was a personal friend of Daniel Reeves. They had known each other for 15 years. Their kids played on the same baseball team. Maya had decided she could not guarantee her own safety inside the official system. Whether she was right or wrong about that, she had made a calculated decision about her own survival. And she had survived. Now, about that TikTok. The video Maya posted that night, the one that began as 800 views and climbed past 40,000 before dawn, did not stop climbing. Once the story broke nationally, once the headlines ran and the news segments aired and the true crime community descended, people went back to that video in massive numbers. They watched it differently now, knowing what they were watching, knowing that this was a young woman saying goodbye, saying she was leaving, saying she had decided to stop waiting for permission to be okay. The video currently has 4.2 million views. The comments section is unlike anything you typically see on the internet. Thousands of people writing long, personal, raw comments about their own experiences. People who recognized something in Maya's eyes that they had seen in their own mirrors. People who said her words had given them courage for something in their own lives. People who had needed, for years, to hear that someone sees you, and had finally heard it. Maya never deleted the video. She left it up. Maya Reeves turned 18 3 months after she disappeared. She is legally an adult now. She gave one interview to a journalist at a mid-sized Georgia publication about 6 months after the story broke. She spoke about her recovery, about the therapy she was finally receiving, about the complexity of rebuilding a sense of self when so much of who you thought you were had been shaped by fear. She spoke about TikTok, about what that community had meant to her during those 2 years, how the comments, the DMs, the strangers who said, "You made me feel less alone tonight," had been, in the absence of anything else, a lifeline. She said, "I made those videos because I needed someone to talk to. I never expected anyone to listen, but they did." And I think that's the whole point, isn't it? You never know who's watching. You never know whose night you might change. So you just keep going. You keep talking. Even when, especially when, you feel invisible. She's doing okay. She said she's figuring out what okay actually feels like on her own terms for the first time in her life. She said she's not ready to make videos again, but she didn't say never. This is what I want you to take away from Maya's story. Not just the crime, not just the drama of the mirror and the bracelet and the midnight drive and the arrest. Those are the mechanics of the story. The story itself is about something quieter and more important. It's about a girl who found her voice in a comment section when she couldn't find it anywhere else. It's about what it costs to stay silent and what it takes to finally stop. It's about the difference between the life you're given and the life you choose to build. It's about the fact that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't something loud or dramatic or visible. Sometimes the bravest thing is climbing out a window at midnight with a go bag and your documentation and your whole terrifying future in front of you. And going anyway. Maya Reeves went anyway. And she is okay. Thank you for spending this time here with us at Story Labs. Stories like Maya's don't exist in the past tense. They're happening right now, in houses in small towns and big cities, behind closed doors and polished facades. And they matter. Every single one. If anything in this story resonated with you personally, please reach out to the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-222-4453. They're available 24 hours a day, every day. You don't have to have it all figured out before you call. You just have to call. And if you're someone who sees something in a TikTok, in a hallway, in the eyes of someone you love, don't look away. See them. That might be everything. Story Labs. Because every story deserves to be told.